Greetings. Hello, folks. Let's check that we're live and all, video and sound, everything okay, hopefully. Welcome to the Sharjah Masters round 4. I'm just getting a few things set. Oops. I'm going to try and get the YouTube folks up here so I can see their chatting as well. Don't want to be chatting into a void, right? So greetings to all the viewers on Twitch and YouTube. I am doing great. Excited to be here for round 4 of the Sharjah Masters. This is a fantastic tournament. Oh my goodness, what a great time we had yesterday. Anyone unclear on how good a time we had yesterday, check out the final moves of the main game that we picked to watch yesterday. It was this position here. White was threatening the crushing knight f6 check, winning the game when Saleh Salem played rook takes b3, threatening mate in 1 on b1, takes, rook a8, king d1, trying to escape from the checkmate with bishop to c1, right? Boom! What the? Can you believe it? Sacked the rook on b3, sacked the queen on h5, check, here, check. And in this position, White resigned. But look at this, the final point of his combination, as the 2 bishops plus 1 little pawn defeat 2 rooks and a queen. There's just no way for the king. It gets pushed by all the diagonals, and then the queen, the new queen, can give a checkmate over here. That's how it would have finished. This was like a mate in 8 or 9 that he played with the queen and double rook sack. So, all right, Toro Di Boro. I'm glad that we can provide you something that you need here. Yeah, so next time somebody asks you about the bishop pair, or if they ask you, did we have a good time yesterday? Oh, we had a great time yesterday. It's going to be hard for today to top yesterday, but we'll see if it can. Here you've got Saleh Salem against Hans-Moke Niemann. These are 2 of the 3 players on 3 out of 3. You saw what kind of form Salem was in. We didn't get to see too well what Niemann's game was like yesterday because of relay errors on his DGT board. Maybe somebody purposely slipped him a DGT board that didn't work, thinking that would make it hard for him to, you know, do his special thing. But it had no effect because he certainly won the game, so that was not a problem for him to not have his game live. Let's open up a couple other games that we're going to follow today. Here's the other player with 3 out of 3. It is Aravind Chidambaram. He's going to play against Amin Tabatabai, who was held to a draw yesterday in a super interesting game by Merjan. We saw parts of that game, but not the whole thing. But we're on to more. To this position here, I think Aravind, although you see him at 2670, I think his live rating, folks, is in the 2690s already. So this guy could very well be the next 2700. Should we check it out just to be sure? Some of us do or don't care about, you know, the horse racing aspect of chess, or about buying. Jesus, they just 2700 chess has jumped the ads. It's just disturbing, disgusting, problematic how crazy it's gone there. Okay, top 100. Let's see where Aravind is now. It's going to be in the 2690s, I think. Look at that, 2693. He's not a teenager, right? He's not like an 18-year-old, 19-year-old rushing towards it. It took him a couple more years, but he is in motion right now. Up here at 2693 on a fantastic run. I think he may have won this Dubai Police Global last week. No, Pranav won it, but maybe on tie breaks over him. I mean, he has You can see a score of 7-2 at that tournament, 5 wins, 4 draws, and like he's picked up. He's got 4 wins in a row. 3 wins in a row here as well. So he is just on fire. I mean, that's just what he's on. Arvind Chitambaram, fantastic player. And let me just say, it's far more interesting to watch this tournament than other tournaments. There's such an incredible wealth of great, amazing players to watch. And when did you guys last get to watch Arvind Chitambaram on a chess broadcast? When did you last get to watch him in a chess broadcast? You probably saw, Farouja and Wesley So playing rapid chess or something, right? Now you get to watch something really thrilling. Okay, let's grab a couple more games. We're probably gonna pick one main game, but we're gonna start off the round like yesterday with 4 or 5 games. Oh, look at that. Our buddy is all the way up onto board 3, it looks like. So I'm not even cheating by watching his game. It's just that's what's in the cards. This insane game we're going to store for the time being. I'm going to go over here and replace Sam's win from yesterday with hopefully Sam's next win from today. Ooh, Sam playing the devious little collie system. Yeah. All right. This is sneaky. It's got a reputation for being terrible. It's an opening from 1910. That was kind of the heyday of this opening. 1910 to 1920. There were some Hungarian masters who liked playing like this. How's Theodoro doing today? We'll see if he can pick himself up, Trouble G. He's probably got white today after that, after a loss yesterday with black. When you lose, it's always better to lose with black and get the white pieces the next day. It can help you to shake off the pain and the violence. But we're going to start off, as I was saying, like we did yesterday, with a selection of a few games to choose from, okay? And then at some point, we're going to focus in on 1 or 2 games that look the most enticing. This one actually looks really cool. And it's Arjun Erigaisi, who's another player I'm biased in favor of. So let's do it as Sam jumps the knight into e5, which is kind of the one of the classic moves of the collie, right? Is plopping that knight into e5 and seeing if it does something for you. My screen capture here, maybe I can make it just a little bit better around Hans's name, right? Sorry, I have a very tiny laptop monitor here, and then I have to do this like pixel by pixel work, and I can't even full screen my OBS because then it loses all the other windows. But this Erigaisi game looks pretty interesting, right? I think he played a weird French or something. That looks potentially like a game to be watching. Yeah, you're welcome, Giamanka. Right, Sharjah is not in Dubai. It is, I learned this yesterday, it is about 45 minutes away from Dubai. If I said Dubai today, then it's because I just can't stop making stupid mistakes. But this tournament is not in Dubai. The next one will be. As soon as Sharjah Masters is open, folks, there's going to be another tournament, the Dubai Open. It starts 2 days after. I can't provide coverage for that. I was going to play in it. I was debating between the Dubai tournament and the Munich tournament. I finally chose Munich over Dubai because I have family to visit there. But the Dubai tournament is super, super strong, and if there's anyone doing good coverage of it next week, I suggest that you watch. The show's going to go on. I think most of the good players in these tournaments are going to continue on and play Dubai. A lot of them already just played the Police Open, like Arvin, like you just saw. So it's 3 sick, insanely tough tournaments in a row with 1 day off in between in each case. Just an amazing feast of chess. And I believe Lee Chess has coverage by Irene Sukandar of this Sharjah Masters, potentially without eval bars, though I'm not sure of that. But I think previously they didn't use eval bars when they covered the candidates. And maybe she'll keep going with the next tournament. So that would be where I would look next week. I would look if Irene Sukandar is doing eval bar list commentary on the Dubai Open next week. That would be awesome. I don't know if educational chess commentary has become a scarce commodity, Filet. I think that, there's always been a ratio between, entertainment and education and, streamers who are really good at chess versus who are learning chess, and, different spectrums, and people playing Blitz and Bullet, I think has always actually been the majority. So I don't know that the landscape is changing too much, but certainly I like what I'm doing, so I'm continuing to do my thing for now. All right, and Peter and others have confirmed that there's no eval bar on the Lee Chess one, right? Blowhot and Peter. Are eval bars that much of a sin? Well, not like a moral sin like cheating. Eval bars aren't a moral sin like cheating is, or like agreeing to a draw in 13 moves is, so we don't have a game to watch. It's a choice. There are people who think that it's good to have the eval bar in your streams, and there's people who think it's bad, and there's people who think it depends, and there's people who think there are some pluses and some minuses either way. I much prefer the stream without the computer, and we're not going to go into it in great length today because we want to talk about the actual positions, right? But I'll just state once the simplest case from my perspective. I think the eval bar takes away the feeling of being like a player in a tournament, because as a player in a tournament, there's never any certainty. It removes all that wondering, all that tension. And I think that not only turns off our brains and alienates us from the player's experience, where I think one of the points of doing a broadcast is to kind of like join in the player's experience. But I think it also removes the entertainment, actually, to me. Like when you take out all that, when you take out most of that tension, most of that wondering, it just to me, it just sucks all the color out of the experience. All right. I could be wrong. That's just, that's just my take. So this position, by the way, it's a theoretical position. Just normal opening theory from already probably 40 years ago, maybe 30 years ago. It's a Kasparov idea, this move, the final move of the game from white, h4, preventing this bishop from going to g5 to control the knight on e3 and have the option of trading it off. The bishop can't take because of queen h5. It's a good challenging move as far as I know. Well, I'm very surprised, obviously disappointed, etc., by this being a draw, because Salem played a great game yesterday, and you'd think he'd be pumped. And then he's got the white pieces. You'd think it's time for him to, let loose. So super lame. Super lame and surprising, because you wouldn't expect it here. But again, here's the beauty of an open tournament. You just close that thing down and you go pick another game. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? We just go here. We find another game that looks interesting to us. There's this Yu Yang Yi game that could be of interest. Somebody wondered how Theodoro was doing today. Should we look at that? We can just scan through some of these openings and see what interests us. King's Indian game between super strong players. All right. I'm going to take that, actually, because I'm learning that opening. So there's a lot of bias as well here, folks. If you like the eval bar, if you don't like bias, wrong show. I don't pretend that I'm unbiased, that I like everybody and every opening and everything equally. I'm interested in certain openings, unbalanced positions. I'm a bit racist, but, you know, not because I want to be. So we just pick things that look pretty awesome, right? And have a look. What do you think of this? These two positions here look kind of juicy. Let's just see if one of these goes crazy at some point. Ah, I lost the spot where they were at. There's the other one. Wait, I wonder if I could... Oh man, look at Maksudlu and Timur Rajabov down here, but they're playing very tame openings. Do you guys mind if I'm like more interested in looking at some less famous players today? Because their openings look cool to me. I hope that's okay. So we got... And we could even look these people up online and try and learn something about them. And get to know who they are. That's one of the beauties of opens. You know, you've got all these... This is where the majority of the chess players are playing. I'm going to make this tentatively our main game, though. For Sam over here. Right, so this main game down here in the corner. So this one, you guys see with my setup, maybe it's self-explanatory, maybe it's terrible, but you see below me there's like a live position from like what we think is the main game we're mainly going to follow for the day. And then to my other side here, I can click around and analyze. And so those positions will often not be the actual position that's actually happening there. How to go through a book which contains many variations. I can't keep track of where the pieces were when going through some variations. One option, Magnus, is you play those variations out on a board. Another is you don't play out all the variations. It depends on your skill level versus the difficulty level of the book. So if the book is aimed at a skill level higher than you, you may be able to get something out of it without going through everything and exhausting yourself. You know? And if the game's like, and if the book's right at your level and you're really interested in the variations, you're just struggling to visualize and go through them, play them out on a board. But there's many, many different ways to go through a book. And there are books where you won't understand everything, but you can still understand something. And you can do a second pass through 10 years later if you're better and you want to. Okay. Rajabov just wants a quick draw each game to fulfill a minimum game requirement for the Azerbaijani team. Never watch a Rajabov game. Wired Retro, I think, is saying they would prefer that I watch some unknown players, so that's cool. I don't think I've seen the movie The Color of Fear. I'm not sure. I think Hans with black, it makes sense for him to take that. Yeah. I think it makes sense for Hans to grab that draw because we're going to look at this game for a little bit and get into it. But from Hans's perspective, you know, he gets a draw with black while he's on the top board of a tournament, and then he can play white tomorrow. I mean, it's basically pretty good strategy, especially his opponent seemed prepared. You saw that his opponent had more than an hour and 30 left on the clock, so he was projecting being well prepared. And then his opponent played really well yesterday. I think he was probably surprised to get the draw offer, but from a certain sporting perspective, it makes sense to take it and try his chances with white in the next game. On the other hand, if he really thinks he's going to become world champion, he should just try and beat everyone with every color. I mean, Hans very much reminiscent of Bobby Fischer, and Bobby wouldn't have taken the draw. So I think he's not quite Bobby Fischer in the end when I see this game. Yeah, Arjun is the chess player with like the greatest appetite basically in the entire world right now. So, well, I mean of you know, of like professional chess players. Some of us might really like to play more chess if we could, which is one thing that I think, you know, players like Rajabov and So may forget to appreciate. But the rest of us would love to have the time to play a bunch of chess games, and we wouldn't make a 10-move draw if we had the chance. All right, so good question, Trouble G. We'll get to that Moritzi board really soon. First, let's get a quick look at this game here. So this is the Kali system. It's playing d4 without a Queen's Gambit c4, without a quick like Knight c3 pushing for e4, without a quick even bringing the bishop out of the pawn structure before playing e3 and maneuvering, like in the London or the Torre, right? The Collie is just this, what? We shut in our own bishop, right? And then we plop it on b2, where it's only going to have an influence if black plays c5 to engage us, or if we can plunk a piece on e5. And the number one thing that one often likes to do as white in these positions is plunk the knight on e5. There's another option, which is to trade on c5 and play e4. That's another main idea. But with a bishop on b7 controlling e4 and a knight on d7 not c6 ready to take on c5, there's no way Sam's getting e4 this game, right? So basically, with the way black played, they could imagine that Sam was going to play knight e5 here. And then a little bit surprising that they then choose to castle, because Sam's obviously trying to grab space on that side of the board. But black, I think, knows what he's doing and trades and brings the knight to e4. That's how he can use the influence of this bishop and try and plug up some of white's attacking pieces before white can gain more space on the king side. If black didn't do this, white has a plan of knight f3, knight g5. White has a plan of queen e1 and then queen to g3 or h4. And white has a plan of rook f3, all kind of just bringing these three pieces towards the king side. And at some point, when you've got too many pieces there compared to black, you start looking at, you know, just sacrifices and threats and attacks. This e6 pawn means that, and f7 pawn means that black doesn't have the space to transfer all their pieces to the king side the way the white pieces can, you see? So gradually, the space advantage of this f4 pawn and this knight on e5 permits white to bring more pieces over to the king side. Black has to take action. All right, before we get deeper into calculating some moves, that sets the stage for this game, for the position on the board. Let me also set the stage for these players, because I think a lot of you probably don't know Abhimanyu Puranik. And he's exactly the kind of chess player that I'm kind of interested in talking about more in the chess world. And I've ever since I was thinking about this at the Sunway Sitges tournament in December, where I played and where he won the tournament, I've been thinking it would be great to have a player like him on Dojo Talks as a guest. This is like the kind of guy who has almost no recognition while being just a tier below the top players in the world, right? But I mean, so good that he's playing at the level of the best chess from 40, 50 years ago, right? Like, if you put him in a match against Spassky from 50 years ago, he'd probably win the match. Or at least it'd be really close, right? Like, he could compete for the world championship at that level. Hey, Andras, did you see how we picked that game for yesterday? Oh my God. I'm sorry you had to sleep, because that was smoking. Maybe the fire alarm woke you in the middle of the night and you knew that somewhere some dude had just sacked a queen and two rooks to checkmate someone with just a bishop pair and a little pawn. You YouTubed it. Meaning you've already got a video up on the subject. Oh, you're releasing it soon. Yeah, cool. Yeah, it was a booyah of a game. Even without your voice, you just have to put something up. People won't know. They'll click on it anyway. You found some insane lines. Cool. Cool. Question about it, since you're here. I was thinking that after he played the rook sack and came here, that... Oh, no, sorry. Okay. Instead of queen h3, he could play knight f6, and white's like slightly better in the endgame. Or, even after blundering queen h3, rook b3, rook a, well, blundering I use loosely, even after falling into this, he could still play knight f6, and it's kind of complicated, right? He's not mated yet. I found this line right after the broadcast. You go here, here, check, here, check. King h8, still trying to mate you, right? And in this position, Don't ruin it. Okay, I'll stop. I'll stop showing lines. I was just going to ask you if I was right or wrong. All right, never mind. There were lots of cool moves possible on the board and in the analysis, right? Folks, follow Chess Coach Andras on YouTube and follow him on YouTube, and you'll get to see follow-up analysis on yesterday's game. I'm going to find his YouTube channel for you and send it to you as a link. It looks like it's Chess Coach Andras. Pretty easy to find. Here you go. All right, go there, and within whatever, an hour or two, there will be follow-up analysis on that game. Certainly by the time this round's done. Right now, you can watch this round live because, you know, the live stuff is sick, right? I mean, what a thrill it's going to be. All right, so check it out. So Shanklin and Puranik. Okay, so what I wanted to tell you guys about Puranik before I noticed Andras in chat, okay? This guy is a workhorse. This guy gets 0 invitations in his entire life. This guy is a stellar chess player. Incredibly strong. Incredibly strong player. Super hard worker. Great guy. Humble. Just fighting along. And like, some people are never going to hear of him. He's never going to get a single invitation to anything. And I think he doesn't make much money. You know, you win Sunway Sitges, you don't even get that much money. So I have a lot of goodwill for this kind of soldier warrior of the chess circuit. And yeah, Paul's never heard of him. Most of us have never heard of him, but he's awesome. All right, so we're gonna watch him today. Hopefully he doesn't, you know, hopefully he doesn't beat Sam today, you know, because I'll be a little bit sad anyway. But he's gonna give Sam a game, and it starts with knight e4, trying to use the bishop on b7 and blocking some of White's attacking pieces. Sam directly makes the trade, messing with the pawn structure. He just cuts the Gordian knot, chops off the head of the beast. Sometimes the beast is a hydra, so it's not always good to just start off by chopping off the head of a beast, right? Or the broom that splits into pieces and the magician's whatever. But in my opinion, folks, in chess, if your opponent like plops one of these knights on e5 and e4, generally your best moment to take it is immediately. Generally, this is not a hard and fast rule, like most rules, exceptions. But the longer you let the piece sit there, your opponent builds up behind it, and it tends to get worse and worse and worse and more impossible to ever capture on e5. So what Puranik chose when he played knight e4 was he's not taking this knight on e5. He's going to eventually play f6 and evict it. He's never going to take it. He's not going to sit around under this knight forever, but it's also going to get harder and harder for him to trade it, right? So knight e4 immediately, and Sam says, yeah, I don't have this f3 resource, so the best I can get out of this piece, I can't slowly chase it out, I can't build up against this piece. The best I'm going to do is mess his pawn structure up and come here. Now it's harder for him to do f6 and f5 kind of moves, and Sam says, okay, now my pawn structure is a little bit better, and the fight goes on, right? He's going to try and get the queen and rook onto good squares next. And there's lots and lots of options from here. Let's think what the different directions Black might take the game from here are. Because there's going to be a question about whether or not White might try and play f5, but it depends what Black does right now. Okay, my first impression, Merles, is that f5 would be pretty desirable for White if you get a good moment to do it. That's my first impression. To me, the obvious moves for Black are knight f6 and bishop d5. Basically coming to control that d5 square and thus defend e6 and stop some of this pressure that's starting to build against this pawn structure here. Oh, sorry, in a circle. I sent it on the Twitch. Here it is on the YouTube. There you go, YouTubers. All right. All right, so you see there's some pressure building against f7, e6 here maybe, right? You know, they're barely defended enough. Queen could come to h5 or g4 to try and hit them, and f5 could come in bringing the rook and some pressure, right? So to me, you know, bishop d5 and knight f6 are the level 1 candidate moves, most obvious. Then as Merle says, like a6 with the idea of b5, that's a level 2 candidate move, totally possible as well, trying to deal with this issue from the side. I will say, though, Merles, very good to put that on your candidate move list, but I also immediately see a problem with a6, b5, to my mind, which is that black now has a notable minority of pawns on the queen side, right? So if you're going to play on the board where you're the minority, you've got to be rather careful, yeah? Your pawns can end up being weak. You know, white can easily play a4 without compromising the structure of his remaining 3 pawns on the queen side. But anything that goes wrong with these 2 pawns, and you've got a major weakness or headache over there. So let's keep a6, b5 on our radar, but understand, like, it's a little bit against the flow or current of the position right now. Now we've got another interesting question here, right? Somebody said d5 for white. I'm sorry, the chat scrolled. Blibup. Yeah, Blibup saying maybe is white threatening b5 here. Is that like a nice move for white? And I gotta say, it's got a ring to it, even though it's not a name or a song. But d5, yeah, I mean, it opens up the bishop on b2. After a trade, you would get into d5, and then f7 and e4 would both become weaker. And if for some reason you were fortunate enough that black just made every trade that you wanted in your direction, folks, right? Like here, here, here. Then you would probably also get a situation where your rook comes to d1 faster than black gets a rook to d8. So you could have like quite a bit of pressure here. At the same time, you really have to watch out for, I think tactically you might not be able to play d5 because of this trade. And then you take with bishop or pawn, either way, bishop c5 check. And you lose your queen. I think that's on the table in the live position here after bishop c4. Like rook c8 didn't change anything in the tactic. If I just pass as black here and white plays d5, I think black can trade everything and win with bishop c5 check. So it looks like we're not yet threatening d5, even though positionally it's a nice thought. It looks like we're not threatening yet, and we're unlikely to play it, right? Because already the moves I told you I was thinking of for black are knight f6 and bishop d5. So I think we can say d5 is probably not going to happen, even though it makes sense. Can we prepare it? Hard to imagine, Lazy Sat. You think you can defend d5 as many times as white as black's going to be doing with knight f6 and then a bishop d5 blockade? Personally, I don't see it, but I do like that it's in the direction of white's pawn majority and that it makes space for this rook. Now let's start looking at some of the moves black might play, right? And see what we think. All right, so bishop d5 could make sense, right? And there, immediately we have to ask ourselves, does Sam want to trade that piece or not? I feel like probably not. Because doesn't this make black's structure a little bit nicer? Like the pawn is now a protected passer, and the bishop is more blocked. Even if you go c4 and take, you can have these 2 isolated pawns that are not very strong on the d file, and your bishop's still bad. So I don't think he would want to trade. I think Sam would play a move like bishop b5 or bishop a6. And you might say, well, why go bishop c4? In view of like bishop d5, you just have to move away. But look, now we take away some squares from black, and we show a real plan, c4. And a3, b4, and just like monstrous pawns on the queen side. Okay, I think that's more in the direction of what Sam would actually want to do. And it's also possible candidate move bishop b5, right? Threatening this knight, trying to see if you can get black to trade, or if black bounces away, you always have c6 for your knight now, and you go c4 and here and keep going from there. Although there's some worries about your bishop having enough territory. So that's why I'm kind of thinking like bishop a6. Merle suggests very interesting move, knight b8, yeah. Then you might see bishop b5, trapping the knight. a6, bishop e2. All super funky and fancy, right? But I don't know about you guys, but I feel that black's like almost making a little bit of anti-progress, right? Like weakening the queen side a little bit, retreating the knight that's going to have to come back out. So even though white's bishop moved 3 times, I think maybe white did a little prodding. Maybe black's a little bit unhappy with what just happened there. Okay, so if this bishop's already maybe on its best square, maybe it makes more sense to go knight f6, although then we're not kicking that knight ever. Okay, this is the kind of position where I would expect Abhimanyu to think quite a while, which he's doing, so that's not a brilliant prediction. But you see why this is kind of like the moment. And normally you only want to think deeply on tactical moments, not on strategic moments at most levels. But at this kind of, but at their level, sometimes, you know, there's a strategic moment that's tricky enough that you have to think what direction you want to take the game. So if you want to go knight f6, you're giving up on f6. If you go bishop d5, you could play f6. Do we try that? Do we try bishop d5 here and then f6? We didn't try it, but it makes sense, right? I'm thinking maybe c4 here. Okay, the move in the game was queen c7. Interesting. Yeah, that had not yet reached our radar. And he played it not too slowly, right? Probably like 10 minutes, like a medium thing. So he did the thing that I'm currently doing. Not to go past a certain point with the strategic things, right? But, you know, 10 minutes is different than your 2 to 3 minute things. I'm going to move away from the sideline in a second now that it's irrelevant, but you guys see this line could be interesting with f6, kicking the knight. You deal with that first. You've defended these, then you can work to untangle things, possibly even with knight b8 still. But to me, after f6, there's one move that's super interesting and might refute it. I mean, there's also knight g4, knight e3. You don't always have to play controversial moves. That's just me. It's again, one of my biases. I like to look at the controversial moves. So the first move I look at is this, trying to leave the knight here and just crack black's light squares with c4. Because f6 weakens the light squares, and then if we trade their bishop and they don't trade ours, watch out, right? So obviously this is complicated. The bishop seems to have sort of nowhere to go. But, you know, technically knight b8 is another candidate move here if you want to be more complete, right? But I'm just going to try and move along faster, so I'm going to just give you a sample here. If black takes here, then after takes, queen d5 is going to collapse all black's light squares probably. And there's even, you know, this move here. So takes, you know, we might see something absolutely madnessy like this, right? And you see that this position's crazy. Black's got these pawns, which could be strong. White's got these ones that could be strong. Pieces are really weird. Hard to evaluate, right? And you need to calculate a little bit to get your bearings to know if it's good or bad. Black could literally play a move like f3 here instead of moving the knight. Like, it's so complicated. You can't exhaustively calculate anything. You do a little calculation to get a sense of what you're dealing with, I think. Okay. So that would be pretty interesting, I think. But in the game, he plays queen c7. Does this move allow d5 by taking the queen off of d5? I mean, it makes d5 less strong because black can put a rook on d8. d5 takes. Yeah, black can't win the pawn on e5. d5 takes, bishop takes. Bishop takes, queen takes. Yeah, maybe actually against d5, black could play knight takes e5. Hey, Abdul, welcome into the show. Yeah, so I think d5, he could take on e5. F5, perhaps by the same logic, you could take on e5, takes. Yeah. Okay, so I think this move stops d5 and f5. So that's the first thing this move does. Then it lets the rooks coordinate. And yeah, we'll see where it goes from there. So I think f5 is not an option. I mean, I might miscalculate something, but black takes. And if you take, you know, that's like a big piece sacrifice. So takes. Now again, if you take on e6, bishop b2, it's a piece sack. I just don't feel like white has the juice, right? So takes, and then the queen recaptures and she defends e6. And I mean, there are some moves you could try in this position. You're not necessarily completely out of options, but the basic point is you can't win back your pawn because of this anchor. And black holds the whole center with this clump of stuff. And probably black's better. So I think there's no f5 or d5 in this position. And Sam's going to have to think a bit. And we're going to click around a little bit from here, okay? It's a good moment for us to try and just click around a little bit, see what some of the other boards are. So we've got Amin versus Cheetah over here. This is an IQP position. Standard opening theory still, but they're not super prepared. Oh, Sam made a move pretty quickly, folks. A mysterious rook move. You can see it down below on the live board. But I'm just going to click around a little bit, see how these things are going. Holy moly, this is insane. Totally insane. And we've got the King's Indian, which is cool. We've got several games which are cool. This game's going to be like over before we get to it. It's so insane. Wow. Look at all those pieces hanging. Maybe we should be watching this game first just because it's going to end first. And then this one's pretty cool too. So this is Maurizi versus Inayan. Okay. It is time now to bring on our eval bar, which I've been trying to prepare real quick in the background. Check Arjun game piece sacrifice. Will do, will do! You don't have to scream at me though. No, it's fine. I'm excitable too. So I should identify with RKJWDUGCVYWCU. I think the Arjun game is some kind of weird artifact. I think the Arjun game is a French. Let's check if that's true. Yep. Advanced variation with a quick f6 instead of queen b6. Yeah, that makes sense. That's how you get this pawn structure. No wonder I recognized it. I've played this line of the advanced French as black with queen c7 and f6 instead of queen b6. So I've had this position before. All right. Knight heads over towards g5 and also overprotecting the e5 pawn, of course. That's a lot of moves of that one knight. He allows knight f7 because he's going to go knight f7, bishop a4 maybe, and trade off his bad bishop. That's a weird tactic, right? I think when I was just clicking through the game, somebody called that out because I saw somebody say bishop a4, and I was like, bishop a4 wasn't played on any of these boards. So it was just a possibility there. Hilarious. Just a little thingamajigger to keep equality. right? And then white spent, 4 moves trading the knight for black's bad bishop. So I guess it's probably still playable for black. It was your bad bishop, but white's got 2 good bishops, so you could still be worse here. In fact, I would bet white is still slightly better here, despite that lengthy knight maneuver that looks sort of bad. Okay, bishop d3, g6 supporting the f5 square. Abdul says, Arjun lost his mind, this looks bad. And Merle says, no, this is how he beats 2600s consistently. And RKJWDUGCW says, exactly. And I will also triple that with an exactly. Okay? This, if you make the position crazy enough, as we saw yesterday in that Fedoseev game, if you have the confidence to go into Tal's Deep Dark Forest and to bring along your opponent, even if your opponent is 2700 like Fedoseev, they're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes too, and they're going to make mistakes, but you're saying you're going to make more mistakes than me. And that's what Arjun does again and again and again. He creates absolute mess, and he has faith in Arjun. And most of us do too. All right, let's see how it's going. Bishop d2. Tucks away his bad bishop, stopping knight f7 for good, finally. The knight retreats. Yeah, okay. I feel like white should have just gone for knight f7. I think they were wrong to go knight g5 and then just bring it home. Let's start with the not controversial things. Knight g5 was an 1100 player move. That's the kind of move you could get hung for, Abdul, if you were one of the senseis. I mean, either you're insulting Petrosian or you're insulting 1100s, or you don't want to talk like that. That's a risk. That's a risk, Abdul. And you called it not controversial. I said that it appears to have not been a good move, and he should have just gone for knight f7 if he was going to play knight g5. I think that's a sober assessment that hopefully doesn't get me canceled either. Hey, bestie, welcome. Welcome to another good day. h6, probably preparing g5. b4, he's ready to rumble. And he's ready to rumble. All right, everybody's ready to rumble. Oof. You see, Petrosian has been taken into the Deep Dark Forest, and now he's forced to make all these kinds of weird choices that he just wasn't prepared to make when he woke up this morning. Right, there is a whole different theory that some top players employ, and then Hikaru says, beat lower rated players by playing a boring strategic position. In a longer game, you're more likely to come out on top. Sure. There's a way of doing that as well, right? There's a way of doing that as well. But what you have to do is you have to make sure that it's a boring strategic position, in quotes, that doesn't simplify too fast, right, Davies? What Hikaru was saying is aiming for the longest possible game so that if you play slightly better than your opponent, the game is long enough for you to get ahead and beat them. You see what I mean? Because chess at its base is a drawn position. And when you're facing an opponent who's 2,500, 2,600 plus, 2,650, it starts to become very hard to beat them. Like, it's not enough to get a small advantage. They will hold, right? They will draw a lot of bad endgames, even down a pawn. A lot of endgames will still be draws. The drawing margin is really big. So to outplay them enough to win, there's 2 things that have to happen. You have to provoke a major mistake from them, or you have to make the game long enough that small mistakes can add up, right? 2 different approaches, basically. And you see Erigaisi using one approach, and what you're mentioning from Hikaru is the other approach. Sam would be using kind of Hikaru's approach in this game over here, right? It's a maneuvering strategic game, but it's one which is likely to keep the tension for a long time and be a longer game, right? More moves, so a chance to slowly get an edge, something annoying happens, something else annoying, and that's also Magnus's style, and it involves a fair number of draws because sometimes your opponents hold. Whereas Erigaisi's style, as folks know, I mean, he lost a game in round 2. You know, he can lose when you play that confidently. Okay, that said, this h3 doesn't look the best, right? Because you're making a move on the side where your king is, and there's a hook for black to break open the position. And Aragaisi played rook g8, threatening g4, and white had prepared g4, preventing black from playing g4 by radical means. Now, black has a normal-looking move here in knight h4, folks. You trade the knights, and then you can play h5 against this pawn. Also, I mean, it's conceivable to simply retreat, but knight e7 blocking your bishop from c5, you know, pawn takes c5, put your queen there. It's not ideal. White gets this diagonal for their bishop. So Arjun plays the controversial move, d4. And now everything is on fire, right? If white makes a simple trade on d4, which he didn't do, he played c4. If white makes a simple trade, the knight comes off of f5 without being sacrificed. And after knight d4, rook d4, black's position still looks pretty promising because they've got the h5 move. And even without h5, this king has just been opened up a lot on all these diagonals, right? Like you've got plans like b6, bishop b7, bishop c5, queen c6. White's weak on all those diagonals. So the sharpest line would have been taking on f5, but the move c4, as Merle says, makes a lot of sense, keeping this rook closed, and black still has to deal with the knight, right? But if you take here, takes here, attacking this piece, and the rook attacks this one, right? Bishop takes c4. I don't know if this was a real piece sack, RKJW. Did you see a way for white to come out ahead of piece? Because it looks like a clean little tactic for Aragaisi to just trade pieces and keep playing. The bishop, if it moves, we're sacking our queen. And whatever else we do, you know, this rook's coming to d3 with a thud. I mean, that's going to hit everything we've got. So f6 or fe6, those moves are going to lose to rook takes d3. We'll just be losing pieces. So probably, you know, the move would be something like rook e3 here. And then maybe black throws in g4, honestly, to tear the king. But at minimum, you can see that after pawn takes f5, black's better. I think incontrovertibly, right? We didn't sack a piece. White's king is ragtag. Black's got the bishop pair. I mean, just very, very simple. And probably g4 stronger than that. But just, I'm showing you the easiest to evaluate before we get into maximizing. So he played c4. And now I don't think Arjun can play knight e3, can he? I know he's already moved, but I don't see what he's done yet because I didn't scroll ahead. And there's a part of me that wants to look at knight e3 before I know the truth of it all, you know? If he just retreats the knight, the move d4 didn't help him that much, honestly. Because it gives white this e4 square for the bishop, or maybe a knight later on. Black's center was, you know, next to each other. This move is not really super desirable unless he's got a fun follow-up. I think you're likely to have your hope realized, Paul. I think Aragaisi has a 50% to 60% chance to make the next candidates tournament. Okay, c4. What would he do? Knight e3, pawn takes e3, pawn takes e3, bishop takes e3. I just don't have a follow-up. The position's just like screaming to just jam something into white's position, right? To just use your pawn like Moritzi did in his game. No sacking piece for nothing, David. Reality just has a way of biting you, right? It just sucks. Hate reality. Okay, how about this? How about this for flaunting reality? I just take. And then I just take. Am I allowed to do that? Then just sort of, you know, put my bishop here and just keep playing. This is a small piece sack. I got 2 pawns for it so far, right? It looks playable. Yeah, you probably try e6 to try and win this pawn, but I've got resources. I've got resources. Starting with g4. Takes. I'm going to surprise you by putting a pawn here instead of the rook. I'm avoiding bishop takes f5. White's got play too. Knight comes in here. Maybe then there's bishop takes e6. I was also trying to gun for like g3 at some point. I think that's playable. All right, let's see what he did in the game. He just retreated the knight. And that's the live position. Whew, it's hot. It is hot. It is hot, that position. What do you guys think about the evaluation here? We should put an eval into our game statuses. Petrosian Aragaisi here. Sense is black is slightly better. Maybe I'm just, it could just be pure bias, right? That's like the funny thing. You have no idea what my evaluation means, right? White should be better, says chat. Okay. So what are the factors for evaluating it? And I'll say this is a position where you don't always need to know the evaluation to play it, because sometimes you just go for what you need to go for, right? Aggressive play against White's king. Yeah, unclear is certainly... If you're allowed to sort of push the buck with unclear and not put yourself down on an evaluation, of course, that's the safest thing to say, is that it's unclear. Clear is certainly a mess. It's quite clear that it's unclear. Yeah, I mean, both players have sort of bad positions here. It's a little bit of a both players have bad positions position. But White has weakened the king dramatically with g4. Yeah, Miso. Hans drew in the opening on move 12 or 13. We don't really know why. All we know is that his opponent offered a draw and he accepted it. That's part of the why, but the motivations of the players is pure speculation. I think you could have a position that's unclear and actually it's winning for one side or the other if you gain a deeper insight into it. To me, there's a mess. The fundamental factor is White's king is weaker than Black's, so I prefer Black. All right, check this out. Morizi Inian. Pop over here for a moment. And let's just back up a few moves. So this is a bishop g5 Najdorf, maybe? Yeah. All right, when I say a few moves, we've now seen the whole game, right? Najdorf, bishop g5, b5. I played this as Black. I feel like my opponent just played knight d5 straight up, more or less. But okay, f5, b5, boom. Love it. That move's pretty cool. If pawn takes bishop b5 check, and then if you go bishop d7, White can take on e6. If you move your king, then of course the king's in the middle of the board, and White's opening up the game with fe6 and e5 as a pawn sack as well. Hey, Rodney. No, I'm not moving my mic. I moved my head quite a bit there. I got closer to the screen for a moment. You're trying to sleep to the stream. Okay. Maybe you should close the stream. You'll sleep better. Good night, Rodney. From all of us here. Have a good sleep. Queen moves, not taking it. Whoa. There's an electric move. The queen trade nobody expected, leaving all the pieces hanging too. Wowzer. Okay, but now if black takes on b5, you get your piece back on f6. Why can't black take here? Well, because now you've got knight c7. And when white played e5, black couldn't take back. I guess there's already knight c7. Ay, ay, ay. But you know, Rodney, at some point someone's going to sack a piece and I'm going to scream. That happens every time too. There are dynamics in this show, you know, like a good piece of music. You notice how like a good piece of music isn't just always screaming or always quiet. Like really good music has dynamics. Same with a good chess show. My playing style, Lazy Sat, is more universal. I used to be just bonkers, but now when I play bonkers, I blunder and I can't win the game. So I'm embracing some more end games in my old age. Really enjoying playing the end game after all. After all those years of trying to avoid end games and hating them. Well, pretty exciting. Gets the piece back immediately. Now, a big question would be e5, but I guess the knight could go to b5 because the bishop's not there yet. Takes on e6. And that's how we get the position from the game. And knight e6, beautiful. Black's light squares have collapsed. The bishop pair is broken up because these bishops will always trade at some point, these two, right? And then this knight's going to be good. There's a threat of knight c7. And if black played bishop b5, which they didn't, they played rook a2, but if they played here, it's conceivable. Could the knight take and then escape through b6? No, there's check. So it would have to be knight b5, I think. Right? This looks losing. Knight here, check, here, here. Simple as day. No, I'm not British. Do I sound British? So against bishop takes b5, it would have just been knight takes b5. And black would recover the pawn. And the game would go on. You know, tiny edge for white, but nothing really clear. I think this knight might move towards f5 at some point to bother him. Oh, that's a good point, Elise. We could play rook d5. I hadn't thought of that. First here, get the knight kicked, but then defend it. And then whatever black does, put this rook here. But still, it's like a mess. I mean, how does this move even work? I don't think it does. I think we actually lose material for white with this idea. So yeah, I think, you know, it would have to be like this and playable for black. Playable for black. In the game, black played rook a2 without the trade. And white keeps the bishop. Black gets the pieces out. Looks like black's holding, right? They're going to have to trade a rook now. They could even trade on e6 after they trade rooks, right? And then bishop f4 to e5. Drow. So this game was exciting initially, but now it is. Holy quality. All right. Let's click around here, see what's going on. Interesting. White's nearly crushing, but they sacked a pawn and they can't quite finish, can they? Your ears? What happened? Oh, did the mic do a thing again? I'm so sorry, everybody. Huh. That's really annoying. I apologize. Let me just turn it down. Maybe. Just turn it down a little bit, John. Maybe that'll help. I apologize, genuinely. Didn't mean to do something. What do you mean again? I'm not doing anything here. What's happening to the mic? I'm not doing anything. I'm not even moving. Like holding my breath. Hey, Patrick. When you lowered? I'm sorry, guys. When I try to fix it, that's when it happens, huh? So I'm like adjusting the position of the mic occasionally, and then it does something crazy. All right. We'll try to avoid that. Let's click around some more. Let's see how this game's going. Poking h7. Okay, and interesting, the dark square bishop trade from Cheetah, huh? Yeah, this move is almost surprising here because against bishop e4, you'd think like knight f6, just telling him to go back would be the most normal move. It was a little bit hard for me to understand, Zorro, honestly, the game of Hans, because it wasn't broadcast properly, so I had to click over it later. I wasn't able to watch it over the course of, 3 hours. I looked over it in like 3 to 5 minutes, and it was very hard to understand. So you'd think this dark squared bishop trade would be mildly in white's favor, but I've seen it happen sometimes in IQPs. It's not the end of the world. Rook e1 preparing to maybe trade on d5 in some position and then play knight f4. Queen d6, stopping knight f4. Right? Takes here. Maybe an idea, so black stops it. And that's the live position. That is a fun fact, Troy Chess. Right now, you should concentrate on, just trying not to lose because the position's not good at the moment. Zorro, Hans's game ended in like a 12-move draw today, so we have nothing really to discuss with it, or we have very little to discuss about it. Okay, so what should white do here? I mean, one option is you sort of take it to an endgame. You play like bishop d5, e d5, queen g3. So this is one way to play it. And this is a playable endgame. It's still within the drawing margin, but you can definitely play it. But it's also within the realm of positions you might want to play as white. So this is fine. Did that make a horrible mic sound, by the way, folks, just now? My knee bumped under the table by accident. Does that do it? No, that didn't do it. Okay. Okay, good to know. Okay, I think this position would be something you could try as white, depending on your style and what you think your opponent's strengths and weaknesses are. Somebody else suggests you could try h4 here. That looks playable as well. So if that pawn comes to h5, that's mildly annoying to black. Good question about their styles. I don't feel qualified to speak on their styles in any detail, unfortunately. I've seen more of Amin's games than of Arvin's games. And Amin, in his games, he likes to get something funky, but he's not willing to be an absolute psycho to get it. Like, you know, he wants something funky and weird and more interesting, but that he feels there are certain limits. So he's not going to be playing, you know, a4, knight a3. He's not going to be playing some of the weird like c4, g4 Englishes that you'll see from somebody like Magsudlu or somebody. He's less weird. He's less weird and less risky than like Magsudlu and Mamedyarov. But he wants their positions. He just doesn't believe you can go quite that bonkers to get those positions. Could black try f5? I think f5 is a bad move, yeah. I think black playing h5 themselves is quite likely, and so is h6. He's weirder than Kasparov, because I think Kasparov felt that he could get those exciting positions with 100% like correct moves and relying a lot on opening prep. And Kasparov was much more patient, willing to nurse like a tiny edge for a long time. Amin's a little bit weirder. Like, if you saw his game yesterday, he started with the Queen's Gambit and then played Rook G1. The position where he played Rook G1 was like a little bit weirder than what Gary would have done. Gary would have just been super prepared, 20 moves deep into the main lines. He was always ahead of everybody in opening prep, so he could afford to just go always for main lines and almost never be out prepped. Always the critical moves, always playing the move that he thought was the most connected to the tension of the position, putting the maximum pressure. Amin is not quite as much of a theoretical player as that. Yeah, Mamedyarov, lots of exchange sacks for sure. He gets unusual positional positions, which can be accentuated with exchange sacks and can allow exchange sacks to be felt more. Yeah, I'm with Lazy Sat about Gary. Lazy Sat says Gary doesn't play aggressive moves just for the sake of it. That's how he differs from other aggressive players. He tries to play as accurate as possible. So in the modern ages, there are issues with just trying to play the main lines. For sure, Google and Passant. It's like a different time, right? Gary could be confident, for years that he had ChessBase and nobody else did, or that he had analysis that no one else had access to. Once they had ChessBase, his still had more opening files in it than anybody. So that gives you a certain confidence and ability to play in a certain way. Oh, look at that. Look at that, Abdul, who was joking about Petrosian's knight g5, giving us license to play knight b5 here. Amin played knight b5. Okay, I mean, one reason behind this is, let's say he follows up with a very simple move, rook c1. It's that a6 is slightly weakening for black, and then he just comes back where he was, and black brings the queen back out. Basically, it means that he played rook c1 and black played a6. A terrible exchange of moves for black. And then he can go for knight a4, knight c5, because a6 makes it harder for black to control the dark squares. So actually, I mean, yeah, black doesn't want to play a6, but now the queen's really weirdly placed. I wonder why she didn't go to d8. Maybe because of takes and knight f4 and still not wanting to concede the f4 square, but queen b8, it's like, how do you get your queen out without playing a6? And a6 is pretty undesirable here. If he goes rook c1, you see, like a6, knight c3, queen d6, knight a4. That's not desirable for black. If I were at gunpoint you're forcing me to say things I don't know anything about. Counterattacking, good calculator. So yeah, I see this is like the problem facing Aravind here. Is like, how do you extricate the queen and finish development without playing a6, which is going to be a real lost move. You can also play bishop d5 here if you want, yeah. I don't think it's the time, though, because it gives black options for bringing this bishop out that black doesn't have right now. I'd rather keep the pressure on black, right? I don't see why he's even thinking, honestly. Rook c1 is so simple and good, but maybe he's thinking about h4 as well. Maybe he doesn't want to allow knight f4. Maybe he doesn't like knight f4 for some reason, so he's thinking about dealing with it. In which case he could play a move like queen f3 here. Yeah, queen f3 is a candidate move. I don't think queen g3 now, although it might be decent, but it's like, it's sort of solving one of black's problems. I understand it's trying to put pressure, right? The idea is here, 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 and you're trying to threaten takes followed by knight c7. Which is so brutal that black might have to play a dumb move like this. And white is better. White is better, I agree. I like this move. Oh, white's quite a bit better. But yeah, I mean, he's okay. So the reason he's thinking, folks, actually is because he's got a tasty choice here. He has three really strong moves: rook c1, queen f3, queen g3, and even h4 could be played by some. Could be played, but I think it's not going to be his choice. Yeah, that was a great game, Davies Chucks. Ali Reza is a better calculator, more aggressive, more confident. Yeah. And more universal. Like Ali Reza can literally, like, he he has like a prodigy's kind of feel for the game. He can play any opening, and he feels like the dynamic. He feels where the dynamic is in every position. He's just fabulous. Oh, look at that. He traded on d5 first. That's pretty surprising, Abdul. And then our queen f3 move. So why not queen f3 first? We have to ask ourselves, right? Because that looked like a strong move. Yeah, Alireza doesn't play weird like Maksudlu and Mamedyarov, right? Alireza doesn't rely on or require playing as many like shocking and disturbing moves. Okay, so maybe there's something wrong with this here. There is. Huh. Good catch, Abdul. So the reason not queen f3 first is knight f6. And you can't take the pawn. Well, that explains it, folks. So he trades first and then goes queen f3 with pressure. We're going to update this to white is a little bit better. I don't know if it's a lot, but certainly white is for choice here. And let's click around. Let's see how Shanky's doing. Yeah, I don't think I can be underestimating how good he is at endgames, you, because I made no comment about how good he is at endgames. You're always holding me at internet gunpoint and asking me to give opinions about things that I'm unqualified to give opinions about, and then criticizing my opinions. But in that case, I didn't say anything about his endgame play. Yeah, I think he's... Yeah, I said somebody else was more universal. I didn't say anything about his endgames. He's a very strong player, obviously. To be 2,700, most any 2,700 is fairly universal, but there's still players who are more or less universal who can play, 80% of positions or 90% of positions, etc. All right, so we were around here when we last saw this game. We saw this sort of mysterious rook c1 move, which says that Shanklin fully expects this bishop to move at some point, right? He's prepared to move it. Oh, also, this move could prepare d5 with the rook covering the c2 pawn in some cases, but yeah, Alireza can be over-aggressive, for sure. Because, as I said, he's got tremendous confidence. Okay, so Sam just holds down the position with the queen. Okay, Abhimanyu goes for knight f6 to d5 finally. Sam's queen slowly finds its way to the king's side. And here there can already be combinations on e6. Knight d5 is played shielding e6. But just to give you a sense of the kind of pressure, like there are positions where you could go bishop takes e6, pawn takes e6, knight g6 check, king over here. You take back one exchange. They take back. You take on e6 with check. You get two pawns in the piece against... 2 pawns in the rook against the minor pieces. And then, you expand c4, c5, and, just create some imbalances and grind the game. Yes, Shanklin style I can comment on for sure. Oh, thank you, bestie. Have a good one. I like to play anyone in an equal endgame now, Lazy Sat. I love equal endgames. But is there anyone I've played against who I think is way better than me at equal end games? No, I can't think of anyone in particular whose endgame would terrify me. As far as Shanklin's style has evolved. At his base, he was a calculating player. Then his style developed based on hard work, with a lot of improvements in his openings and lots of preparation. Then everybody got really booked up and preparation changed, and for a while people had caught up with him in preparation. And he started working really hard on improving his calculation, trying to make his calculation just simply better than everybody else's. And he still works on it to this day. It's a very important piece of his chess play. He's put in a ton of work on endgames as well. But endgames are tough. He's definitely very, very hardworking, Patrick. I think there's several other ones who are hardworking, but yeah, Sam is a very, very hardworking person, for sure. Okay, so I don't know if bishop takes was threatened yet, but it was sort of in the air. It was a possible move here. And knight d5 shuts it down. Whoa! That's a surprise trade from Sam right there. Is he going to play c4 immediately? No. He goes straight for the king with f6. But he's left his bishop behind. He's left his bishop behind. Sam is less good at blitz and rapid because until very recently he had never trained for it. So he played practice classical games, but he didn't play practice rapid or blitz games, you know? So he was less good at those. He never played them seriously. You know, only the top 10 or 15 players in the world get invited to those expensive or whatever, those high prize fund kind of rapid tournaments. So 2,600 players, a lot of them have almost no experience playing rapid chess. You know, like if you're his opponent here, Abhimanyu Mishra, probably not a particularly good rapid player because he just doesn't have occasion to practice it. It's not financially rewarding for him to practice it. That's not where he, you know, earns money or plays a lot of tournaments in rapid chess, right? So he's unlikely to be very good at it just because he hasn't practiced it so much. And then also, as I said, you know, Sam was originally a calculator, and calculators are less good in speed chess than instinctive players, intuitive players, positional players. Okay. So why didn't he just play f5? Oh, without the trade, Patrick? Oh, he's trying to shut out that bishop and open up his. Big move from Abhimanyu. Really, really going for it there. Why didn't Sam play f5 without the trade? f5 without the trade. I don't see an obvious reason. Not for everybody, unknown. Some people are, you know, prefer the parts of the game that they're better at. Most people. But some people like things based on how much they like them, not how good they are. You know, there are people who like playing over Tal's games, and it's like their favorite kind of chess, but they don't play like Tal because they can't. It just doesn't work for them. Some of the boards just don't have clock times, yeah? Sorry about that, folks. Knight e3, there's queen e3, right? I'm just going to grab an ice pack. Sorry, 1 second. Okay. So I don't see a strong reason not to have played f5. It's a good question, but I don't think we're going to find the answer for it today in the time we have. So we'll just continue with what Sam did. The slightly surprising trade followed by f5. And then a big move from Abhimanyu. He seems to, you know, Sam seems to be trying to play f6. And he takes, which seems to like give Sam easy access to f6. Although let's point out, he couldn't block f6 with f6 himself because of knight g6, right? So once he's traded, I mean, in theory, he could try to play f6 himself. But his real plan is this d4 move, shutting down the bishop. It's defended twice. It's overprotected. Even if you go rook d1, the pawn's still protected. Black's preparing queen takes e5. And Sam needs something really good here, because if black plays queen takes e5, I mean, he's busted. So I don't think something like rook d1 or whatever is going to be good enough. I think he's going to have to play f6 here and sack a pawn or something. He could be lost here. But I'm at least going to quickly downgrade it to equal, because there's no way he's better. Let me think for a little bit if I want to write that black's better. So it's like f6. And if black goes g6, then you can play e6, which is pretty messy, right? So Merle's is saying rook f4, queen takes e5, rook h4. Really? Merle's thinks we can just go rook f4 here with the e-pawn hanging. Wow. All right, I'll just say the line I was thinking here. Sorry, I should be moving pieces, but my fingers are bleeding. So here would be the idea for black, bringing the queen to cover this part of the board. And now, as white, we go rook f5. Maybe queen e6. But see, now this is more delicate. We have some shots here. Let's see. I was thinking maybe of doubling rooks here. Black could go for e3. That's really what black wants to do, is e3. Yeah, let's do this. I don't know. White's got chances here. It's pretty messy. Maybe unclear, right? Yeah, probably just take, actually. Yeah, just take. So the king has to take here rather than a queen or rook. And then come here. Yeah, rook f1, g6, queen h6, there's rook g8, right? I mean, I also thought black might take or play rook g8 here, right? But if they go g6, they can avoid the checkmate at least. Yeah, an immediate rook h5 right here would be great, except for queen h3. That's why I put the black queen on e6, was to stop this move at the cost of weakening this pawn. And if white goes rook d1 to go after this, maybe this move is good enough. Although, man, If you take with the bishop, shh, Papa, quiet. If you take with the bishop, black can probably sack in exchange, right? And just try to win with the pawn. Actually, okay. Oh yeah, the queen's got here. Ay, ay, ay. I almost thought queen h7 was going to win for white, right? Messy. Okay, but I think it would probably be better to take with the rook, right? Threatening all kinds of discovered checks. And here white's probably good. Okay, then chat's asking about g6, queen here, rook here, going for this famous checkmate. Do you guys consider any defenses for against queen c3 check, Johan? There's f6 in that other line. Do you guys consider any defenses for black here against your rook f4 idea? Anyone consider any possible defensive move for black? Because I've got multiple people asking me if rook f4 wins, but I think all reasonable moves for black here win for black. That sort of tells me you haven't tried to refute your own idea at all. Right? You haven't tried to defend. Maybe this move doesn't work. Maybe that move doesn't work. But queen f5 definitely removes white's play completely. Okay, so that's messy. Let's see if Sam's moved in the game. He has. He played rook f4 without f6, like somebody told us. Okay, so Merle's told us that if queen e5, which Pironic did not play, there would be rook f4, no queen f5 because the queen's defending it, h6, and takes with mate. That's what we were promised, so let's try and confirm it. I imagine f6 was the idea, and that black queen, it's so central and it can't get here. That's pretty surprising. I mean, black just got mated with seemingly having defenders and, you know, no more attackers. But it does look like mate. It's a little bit of a surprising variation. So in the game, black plays g5. Holy cannoli. That's a what the heck of a move. What is going on? Abhimanyu is like throwing his pieces with abandon here. He's playing it pretty quick. He's playing it pretty quick, so I'm really shocked that he could be confident this quickly and this wild a continuation. Okay, Abdul says there's no way g5 can be good. It could be okay. Definitely white's not worse, though. I mean, just the move queen h6 here is fine for white. So I'm not going to adjust my evaluation like I was talking about to black is better. With this d pawn on d4, it's definitely complicated, but the position I would say is probably close to equal, but with a spiciness factor, right, that's off the charts. Sam took. Okay, he had lots of moves here. Rook g4, queen h6. I cannot believe how fast these players are able to figure this stuff out. Oh my god, he's going to play queen d7 next. Rook f8, queen d7 would be the game, wouldn't it? Rook f8. I mean, you have to play queen c2 in response. Holy moly. Okay, the queen probably has to take on f8 now, right? He's calculating now. But if rook f8, queen d7, then you have to go queen c2 or you lose. And then white has queen takes d4, which I think leaves white with a clear advantage. Let's see if I've got that right. Oh no, there's queen c1 drawing, right? All right, let's try this. Look here. Okay, so d4 is dropping. So I think black has to go for queen c2. Okay, I see Patrick suggesting queen d7, but I think after queen d7, queen d4, white's crushing. You don't know about queen c2. Okay. Oh, there's queen d5, but then you're just down a pawn. You know, you could suffer along. But I think here. 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 And here with a draw. Okay, Abdul says maybe h3 in this position. That's very, very risky. But you are threatening the queen, so there's no time for e3, is there? Rook f1, rook f1. Okay, so it's here. Here. That's insane, Abdul. Nice find. Queen c2, h3. Queen b2, rook c7. Checkmate looks forced. Well, there's queen c1. We should always know not to resign too soon. But queen c1, rook c1 is going to be good enough. All right. You have to try really hard to refute your ideas if you want to get really, really good. So let's see if we can't refute this idea. Even when it looks like death, we try to refute every idea we come up with. Wow. Yeah. Looks winning. So Puranic hasn't moved yet. But that definitely looks like you got to play oh man, moving his g-pawn. And then fg. Now he can never fight this bishop. It's just this flimsy d4 pawn. Black's definitely going to play queen f8 eventually. I 100% don't believe in rook f8. And that was before I did my calculation. You know, I looked at that position. I said, rook f8, queen d7. There's almost no chance that's going to be playable for black. It's almost certainly going to have to be queen f8. But then, you know, then you calculate to check it. But sometimes you have a strong instinct. So Shirley drops a draw. I don't think black's better, Patrick. Okay, so I would suggest maybe this move for white. Just improving this piece a little bit. And one of the things I'm doing is I want to answer the move e3 with queen takes e3. Right. Okay. So, I mean, black could play passively here. I think it is Abhijit, yeah. As far as we could tell, after h3, black was just lost. Queen was attacked and rook, whatever was coming. But we didn't look for every possible queen move. I mean, there might be some other moves. Queen c2, h3. We could go back to that for a second. We didn't look at a move like queen here or something. Now you can answer rook c7 with queen f1, queen f4 and stuff. The thing is, white can also just take this piece, right? Or play bishop takes d4. Right? Just trying to play e6 and stuff. It seems like you're dead on the dark squares. To bishop takes d4 more than anything. So I guess the other move would be like queen here. And then if rook c7, you have rook f1, king h2, queen f4. So maybe white takes like this. And now you're down a piece. So you try this. And now the queen's not in front of the rook to give mate, but it still looks strong. Still looks like enough to win, right? Rook h7 and then queen g7. So I think we should look at queen f8 for a moment. In that position after bishop d4, e3, Patrick, I think it's e6 check, king g8, queen g7 checkmate. That's why bishop d4 is really bad. So I want to try queen f8. Okay, he's just played queen f8. All right, so what I was trying to get into an analysis was like e6. We're just getting out of the way of this bishop. We're trying, like, this bishop is murderous. You know, if it's the difference between white having played g3 or not, folks. It's night and day. And even though this pawn is really looking much more dangerous, I think black's almost dead here. Okay, we're just trying to play queen e3, and you know, rook d1 next move, right? So if black goes queen f6, well intentioned. White goes rook d1. I mean, you can't hold d4 forever, not with a dark squared bishop, right? You're just going to lose. So I think one interesting line here is queen f2. That's controversial, right? And now I want to try e7 for white. Rook e8. Queen d7. Bishop d4 comes again. Oh, it's just murder. It's just murder. All right, how long will it take Sam to play e6? I think white's winning. This is me going out on a limb. I'm not confident at all. You can see my eval bar is jittering, not because the players are blundering, but because I, the evaluator, am blundering. But it looks like this was a real no to g5, actually, that's happening here. And I was surprised even by Sam's response. You know, yeah, king g8 is probably the best move toward him. We can look at that. But I was even surprised by Sam's response to g5 because there looked like so many possible moves. But when he just takes, he's ensuring that that f7 pawn is never going to live on f6, right? And never going to shelter the king. So that's what he achieves. And then the simple trade, man, who would have seen it coming, right? Okay, so e6, king g8 is a good question for sure. e6, king g8. Then let's say like maybe queen h4. Or queen g3. What's better? Queen g3. Well, so like queen h4, you'll basically get this position, I think, and you'll trade these pawns. And we see the domination of your bishop, but black's still defending, right? This is like a clear advantage, but maybe not lost yet, right? With queen g3, I'm allowing queen e7, but I'm trying to post my queen here, where she's more aggressive. But somebody did point out the idea of putting the rook on d5, which is kind of good. And then like queen b8, rook d8 is repetitive. What's the threat with queen h4? It's e7, Dornham. You play a random move, it's this. A major threat. That's a full queen threat. Oh. Queen g3, queen e7. Here. Yeah, Dritman, you're right. The rook should definitely be improved, and it could go to d1. But we do have to look at queen g3 and h4 as well because they prevent black. There's some fight between white and black for the territory for the queen. Like if you go rook d1, black plays queen f6. And then it's too late to go you know, queen h4, queen g3. All right, white's not winning. White's just better. I'm going to backtrack. There's no clear win here after king g8. That's a nice move. Could white just start here with rook d1? Maybe. But I don't know that you're threatening to take on d4 because there's queen f1 checkmate. All right, Sam played e6. Options other than e6, you know, I guess technically there's rook d1, improving the rook. There's king g1, getting rid of some of the back rank mates and getting off the diagonal of the bishop, right? Just like king g8 is a good move for black, king g1 is a good move for white. It lets you play rook f1. And your king's better off on g1 a bit. So that was another candidate move if e6 hadn't been good. But e6 was decent. You guys can see the moves before me, right? Because they're updating in the board below me, right? Even if I don't see the update because I'm analyzing. This game, oh, we were right about it being equal. Look, they only played one more move and agreed to a draw. We had that move. We had that game down. Is this one here still interesting? Yeah. This one here still interesting? Whoa. Knight c5. Queen a1, a takes b4. Queen takes a8. What the heck was going on here? Why not even play queen a1? Thanks, Marcin. Okay, so I guess the line we're wondering here is queen a1, pawn takes, queen takes, pawn takes. So here white is up one full minor piece. I would probably forego castling to keep black from having a pass pawn on b2. It's probably winning. Okay, so the other option, so queen a1. Black can go bishop takes h3. Yeah. So what I want to stress about this position right here is that if white loses the knight on a4 for nothing, the position will be about equal. Oh my god, g5, g4? Uh-oh, okay. Well, that's a really bizarro tactic. Did you guys see that line? Let me try and put it on the board for you. Look at this. With the rook on h3, I've never seen this pawn sack, this pawn fork before. That is a weird one. Yeah, we could go knight takes g5 and keep playing, but I'm not as pumped. I think it makes more sense to take this way and keep my material. And then we'll come here. So black has to do this. White has to do this. Black has to try and play b5. But now knight b6. And white keeps All their ill-gotten gains, or well-gotten gains. So, interesting. I don't know what black's even going for. Queen a1 looks winning, but b5 looks fine too. c5 played. He takes it in peace. I guess this is just simple, so we didn't need to do the other. Completely winning for white. Absolute disaster for black. And really confusing what black was thinking or counting on in this continuation here. I mean, you're just losing your pieces. So it's a bishop e3. What's a5 doing? Ooh. This is like an article on how not to play the King's Indian. Oh my God. Oh, disaster. That one's gone. All right, let's check our other super interesting game. We've got two really great games here. We've got the Shanklin game and the Aragaisi game. This game here also interesting, but more from like a more of a technical game. Bishop e6 was played by Cheetah, who's really low on time. Rook d1, a6 happens. h4, and black doesn't play h5. So already white could take on d5. Black trades everything, plays rook d8. But then knight f4, and you can't take on d4. So white is up a pawn. All right, folks, I'm just going to show a quick variation. Takes, takes. It's a good little calculation exercise itself, right? You see the energy of the tactics coming back and forth. We can go to c7 as well as here, by the way. Doesn't really matter. And white wins. So black can't win the pawn back on d4 here. Maybe rook d8 without the trade. Oh yeah, that changes it. That's perfectly sound for black now. Probably. Probably knight e4 is a good question. Knight e4, queen d5, queen f6, king g8. Looks like black should hold. Oh, yeah, okay. I don't think white can take the pawn, actually. Maybe h5 first here. And then against g5, you would take on d5. And against rook d8, you would go knight e3. Yeah. How's that? So we poke. Now, black could play a move like rook d8 and just let us poke. And with the same welcome to the dojo moment available here. So h5, maybe black would just play rook d8, right? But I think white's putting, noticeable pressure on black here. Maybe this. Oh, also this move is kind of slick. Queen g3. With the idea of playing knight takes d5. Oh, it doesn't work though. What am I doing? It doesn't work. So maybe just queen g4. I don't know how you can say that Amin won't win just because the position's not up his alley. He's got a good position by any standards. Right, the reason I was playing g5, folks, the reason I was playing g5 for black against queen g3 and queen g4 was that I figured white was threatening rook e6 probably in these positions. Not only that, I mean, we can beef it up with rook here, etc. I released the tension because I was expecting black to play g5, Elise, right? I thought I was already making such a strong threat that black would have to go g5, and that's why I traded the pawn instead of leaving it there, because I wanted these squares to already be weak and my pawn to already be traded instead of left on h5 not doing anything. But I'd also had a concept where I would use the pawn to go h6, king h6, and win the f6 pawn in some other line. But I didn't. But that line I didn't make it work quite. Yeah, the f5 square is not immediate to get to, but there are ways to get to it. There's some ways here and there. Okay, so Amin is having a deep think, but the position is definitely really nice for him. Do we have the correct evaluation on this game? White is better. This one is a draw. Any developments on Sam's game? King g8 played like we thought. Queen h4. Rook e8. Okay, we predicted all these moves. So here I think, you know, the e6 pawn goes for the d4 pawn. White's better, and it's not by any means over, right? Yeah, this is just advantage for white. Just advantage for white, but we've seen this coming, so let's go over here. What happened after knight e7? Manuel locked the queen side. Do not like that move. I do not like that. That does not look right. b6, bringing the bishop to b7. At least he's got bishop e4, though. Doesn't use bishop e4. They fight over the e5 pawn. Now he's got to go bishop e4. The knight is getting checked. Trades, and sends it to an endgame. Dang. The endgame looks good for black, right, guys? Because he's got the f file to play on, and that like f2 and e5 pawns are separated. What a solution. Okay, I expected king g2 here. Instead, we get the slightly oddball rook a3, but hey, it also stops the d pawn, controls d3. Knight heads towards this side of the board, and he looks to open another front. Wow. No doubling of the rooks. He can't play h5 because his g-pawn is just too hangy. And he doesn't have enough force to just win here, so he goes to a8. Okay, so maybe white's okay. Oh, interesting detail in Sam's game. Instead of playing rook takes e6 when white might play bishop e3 and keep the better bishop on the board while improving the rook, Mishra threw away the pawn to make sure that his bishop would be open. So he'd rather just play down a pawn, but know that his bishop is just as good-ish as Sam's bishop. Very interesting. Sorry, Puranic, yeah. Yeah, so Puranic played e3 here. Clever. Clever. Sam took it because, you know, he's got to. What else is he doing? Now Black's thinking, maybe double checking, you know, rook e6, queen c4 or something. Or rook e6, bishop h6 even. If queen f1 weren't checkmate, then in this position here, white would have the amazing move rook f1. Because against queen takes queen, you checkmate. And against queen f1, you would have queen d8 check, king f7, queen f8 checkmate. You know, like if your king were on h2 or something. That'd be quite a tactic. So rook h6, bishop h6, queen f6. Well, he better be able to take this pawn on e6. That's all I can say. He's taking it. Like, in this position, if he can't take that pawn, you done something wrong, my friend. So he takes it. But... No, I think this is as much as Sam had, Patrick. It's a playable position. He's up a pawn. Black's king is weak. Yeah, I don't have any sense that he sold things short. Maybe queen f... No queen f7, queen d8, rook e8, queen d4. Yeah, black's a little bit tied up. Also just queen f7, you know, rook d1 looks decent. White can... I want to say white can press forever in this position. Like, it's just good for white. Yeah, I think this is plenty good. Okay, everybody in chat thinks he had more than this. I think this is decent, and he didn't have like a straight up knockout. Bishop g2 is both a capture and a check. All right, sure, we'll calculate it. If the king goes this way, then queen d5 to g2 is mate. I think white's escaped. If the rook retreats somewhere random, then queen c4 will neutralize black's position. If queen f3, then this pattern I mentioned before, queen d8 to f8 will win. But that was barely. Yeah, you were right to look at that move when Agidon. I was not being alert. Yeah. Totally lacking my sense of danger to have not calculated bishop g2. You gotta have your sense of danger about you. Or it's gonna be tough in Munich if I don't have my sense of danger with me when I go there. Rook e2 is also interesting. No way, that's too much. You're sacking a queen. Maybe I'll take the rook first, or as well. I think queen f7 or f6 would make sense here. Something like that. Queen a8. And then you've got the d5 square. So against like queen c4, you can come here and deal with that. Nice. You know what might be kind of tough against that move, though, is this one, rook d1. So you could take if you want to, or you could just go rook e8. If you throw in the take, then I think queen c4 ends the game, kind of like in that variation we saw last time from black's side, right? So we can't take on g2 against rook d1. We just have to go rook e8. No, then still queen c4 wins. No, I think I may have beaten queen a8 here, Liart. Rook d1 looks very good as I'm looking at it here. Yeah. This is going to be a hell of a position for black, right, folks? I mean, even though black's bishop is active, this is the difference between the pawn moved or not, right? Do you see that this is just like black's a little bit closer to mated than white with this pawn moved up? Rook d1, bishop d5. There's many winning moves after bishop d5, Patrick. C4 probably, but also queen d4 would be. I guess there's the back rank mate. Maybe I'm not completely winning here, but I mean, what do you do about queen g7? This is not working out. No lazy sad. All the interesting games are still interesting, I think. Yeah, I mean, you know, we could argue that black tries to like keep going like this or something, but you know, maybe I just play king g1, so this will never be check. And oh, now there's no back rank mate, so I'm threatening to take it. And bishop g2, okay. Bishop g2, king g1, bishop d5. You missed a mate in one? Okay. Yeah, I didn't believe there was going to be any defense there, right? This had the feeling of there's no longer going to be defenses. Bishop g2, king g1, bishop d5, c4, rook e4. Yeah, queen f6 makes sense, yeah. And yeah, and here you couldn't cover these things anymore. There is rook g4 check. I mean, you can throw another check. Let's go to a dark square. Oh, I allowed another check. A little bit scary. Queen e8 again looks interesting, but there's mate in one. E3 was a very important move or moment in the game. Sam hasn't moved yet on rook e6, by the way. It's an important moment for him as well. To rook e6. He could conceivably play queen c4 here as well as bishop h6. We haven't looked at all his options here. He's got a lot of options. King g1, there's rook takes e3, right? So he's got either queen c4, bishop h6 or whatever. But let's just talk about this decision for 1 second for Troy. We'll recap this decision. It's very interesting, right? From black's perspective, if you take this pawn and white goes here, your bishop's bad, right? So now you have material equality, but your king is going to be in danger forever, and your bishop is actually bad. It almost feels like you're down a piece. Now, white has to time things carefully, because to finish you, the bishop has to come out from e3 to d4 or h6, right? But this is a certain kind of danger and suffering, right? That white can try to slowly improve the position, like king g1, rook f1, h3, getting rid of back rank mates and covering some more light squares, right? And then at the right time, white wants to play either bishop d4 or bishop h6 and go for a mating attack against you. So there's a certain kind of danger to this position. The idea with e3 is you give up that e4 pawn so that you're certain that your bishop on b7 is good. So opposite colored bishop positions, you can generally draw them down a pawn. You don't lose because of the pawn, right? So I think a lot of people would make the same choice as Puranic, right? In the middle game, you need to make sure your bishop is active. And you know that if white deals with your activity and trades stuff off, then you're going to draw you're going to draw the majority of the endgames here, right? I'm not saying for sure he was right, but that's the thinking behind the decision. And I feel like most strong players, their strategic inclination would be to go for e3. Okay. Now, if they calculated some specific problem at the end with queen c4 or bishop h6 or something, they might hesitate and say, shoot, I can't play e3 here. Because there is also, initiative and tempo matter as well. But as purely a strategic decision, it makes a lot of sense to prefer to be down that pawn. Yeah. And now, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens here. Sam's probably getting towards the end of his long think. Unfortunately, we don't know what time they have. Even if we go here, it just doesn't have a clock for Sam's game, does it? Right, like we can see clocks on other games, but just not on Sam's game. Oh, he's just played queen c4, though. We saw that. Queen c4, queen f5 get played. So that's allowing rook f1 with the idea of queen d5, bishop h6, queen g2 mate, or rook f1. Sorry, I mean, we might as well be on the big board if we're talking about the game. So here against rook f1, he'll have either queen e4 or queen d5, same idea. And then bishop h6. There will be checkmate on g2. If white trades queens and then goes bishop h6, then he can play rook to e8, dealing with the mate. Now, there is a question, could white possibly, is there any chance white could win that endgame? You could put the bishop on e4, d5. It doesn't really make the biggest difference. So we get to play this kind of position. Does white have any chance to win this endgame? Yes, it's not completely dead drawn. Queen h3, what? Okay, Sam hasn't played rook f1 anyway. He's played rook d1. You guys are saying against rook f1 there'd be queen h3? Okay, that's that. Yeah, maybe there is. It's a weird move, but it does hit the spots, and amazingly, you can take the bishop and defend the rook too. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that would work. Here's what Sam played in the game: rook d1. Does that blunder queen h3, or does he have rook d8 and queen c7 and stuff now? Queen h3, what a move. Queen h3, queen c8. That's funny. If we look at another board, Joao, it looks like on other boards they have about an hour worth of time between them. So they have something like half an hour each. I don't have a sense of who's moved faster this game. B5 played. I'm just shocked at how quickly they come up with some of this because the game is so crazy intense. So here, like a very basic variation is queen c7, rook e3, rook d8 wins for white. On queen c7, there's also going to be bishop takes g2 is going to be an important variation. And then if white takes, queen g4 probably wins for black, so white would have to go king g1. So, of course, Sam could also start with rook d8 here. Definitely a candidate move as well. Oh, it'd be so much nicer if he had his king on g1, right? The odds are they have some amount of time, yeah. B5. Rook D8. Let's say King F7. Rook D8, King F7, Queen C7, Rook E7. And black wins, I think. Opposite colored bishop middle games are really, really violent. Like, even if you showed this to a computer and it said +1, it's still a position that Sam could lose in 3 moves, like with very plausible moves, right? Like, let me show you this variation. He played Queen D4, apparently. Some kind of a sane-looking move, right? But look at this line. Check. Here. Check. Here. And you're lost. You can't go Rook D7 because the queen's on it. If you go Queen F4, black has Rook takes E3, winning the game immediately. You know? You got to either feel the danger or know all these patterns and spot them really, really quickly. I guess Queen F4, Rook E1 is a simpler pattern people might be accustomed to. And if like Queen G3, with the idea of Queen F1, Bishop G1, here black again wins with this move, right? What a sick move. So that's an important one to know. Yeah, we don't know, chess lover. Nobody knows. Nobody outside of Sharjah knows how much time they have. Sam played Queen D4. And Merle says black could play Queen E4 and force queens off the board. Yeah, I guess so. Potentially a very risky endgame for black, though, right? Because A7 drops as well. Yeah, very, very risky. Very risky. I don't think black's going to go for Queen E4. I think black's looking for some tactical counter shots. It also depends on the clock situation. Like, we can't perfectly commentate this situation if there is such a thing as perfect commentary, because we also don't know who has what time, right? Having or not having time changes some of these decisions. Here's one line that's correct. Queen here, there's check, and the king can go to either square, and then it's checkmate, because all these squares are cut off. So black can't grab C2. Well, Patrick, I'll just back up what I was saying just a tiny bit. In this position here, white's threatening Rook D8, Rook D7, so there's no time for the Rook E2 move. You see? And the bishop on A7 is stopping back rank mate. So I don't think he's going to go for Queen E4. Somebody in chat is suggesting this idea. Check, takes, and here. Now if white goes on the attack, the king can come out here. Fair enough. And if white takes here, there's check and takes. That queen ending might be playable for white. Black's got good chances at a draw, but there's... The game could go on, even there. White would be able to win material in this line with like this move, for example. You take this with check and then use checks to bring your queen back around to a square like e4 or something. You can keep playing, but it may be drawn because the king's totally open. But if you can move your king over to the queen side, you know, near this pawn, hide among your 3 pawns, there's definitely a winning plan available as well. I think this queen ending would be complicated, not just an instant single answer to it. Black might need to go for counterplay with their pawns, and it might be complicated. Bishop g2, king g2, rook e3. Let's just double check that coming out like this is safe for black. What lost the queen? Here, here. The queen's defended by a pawn, so rook h7 doesn't work yet. And if you go queen f4, queen g5, here rook h7 would work, except you're already in check. So you have to trade here, and then, you know, something like here, check, here, 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 maybe. It's enough to draw. It is drawable. Queen e4 was played, and takes with the bishop to get it off of this rook d8, d7 stuff. It blocks the rook from here, but he has the threat of bishop g2 to try and draw the game here. Okay. Okay, I understand. Bishop takes e4, that makes sense. Even against rook d2, you go bishop g2, king g2, rook takes e3. So very, very likely that white takes on a7 and black takes on c2 with a potentially drawable endgame. Yeah, so Dripman, that endgame is a theoretical draw with with 1 pawn each on the king side and white up 1 pawn on the queen side. Yeah. Thank you for registering your preference and opinion, but I am not going to go look at all the other games. I'm looking at enough games for me. This is my choice for today. Even with this, it's hard to keep up with the games that we do have. Knight fd5 was played without h5. Rook d8, knight e3, knight d4. It all happened. Oh, and he just grabs b7 and he's up a pawn anyway. Look at that, folks. Not that weird. He took a pawn, right? He took a pawn. Very logical. He did spend like 25 minutes on that decision, whereas Aravind played his moves instantly. So the time gap has closed between them. Yeah, white's got a plus, but it's still not in the winning, not clearly in the winning range, you know. Black's got a nice long-range bishop versus the knight. The bishop's now a little bit better than the knight now that d5 pawn's gone. So, you know, white's advantage is like 0.8, 0.9 or something in that range, I'm guessing, which means, you know, not done yet. Let's see about Aragaisi's weird rook a8 move. King here, other rook comes to f8. Rook a1. Okay, so yeah, Petrosian's fighting for that tension on the a file. He refuses to just close the queen side, nor does he allow black to just play a6 themselves. Where will the queen go in this other game? E4? Or maybe he's looking at knight e4? I don't know. Queen e4, f5. Queen b1. f5 is a big commitment. Knight e4, it looks like queen e7's okay. Yeah, the idea of putting a black bishop on b3 in various variations you guys are suggesting, putting a black bishop on b3, blocking the b2 pawn, making it hard for white to keep the rook on the d file, because if you play rook d2 or rook d3, you might be losing the exchange to knight f3 check. So bishop b3, you kick the rook off the d file, establish the knight on d4, bishop on b3. Very hard for white to ever work their way out of that. Yeah, I think black is looking pretty okay here. Okay, we've got a cool suggestion here from you to maybe play rook takes f3 and then knight takes e5. And where does the white rook go after that, you know? And then you're going to take on c4, yeah. That looks pretty cool. That looks pretty cool. Look at the time lead that Arjun had in this game, by the way, folks, and now he's spending a lot of it on this. Yeah, Liard, I feel like in general, the feeling is, yeah, it's like this is an unpleasant pawn to be up here. And those lines we were playing with just h5 and just continuing to poke felt really pleasant for white. So maybe he went too soon for a calculation solution. Maybe he did. I mean, I didn't see any great ideas for Arjun recently. You know, I really felt like I was struggling to see how he, you know, wins or makes progress. He could also play knight e5 here without sacking the exchange, couldn't he? Knight e5, just straight off. Right, he can also take with the bishop. With the bishop or the knight, he can take that pawn. And I agree with you, Patrick. Taking with the bishop first looks generally better. Maybe white has rook e1? Yeah, that must be the resource for white. This must be the move white would then try. Right? And that looks okay for white. Once the rook gets here, I mean, black's position's completely falling apart, honestly. So that's the benefit of taking on f3, is that he can take with the knight, The rook can't get to f7, but it also can't even stay on the f file to keep threatening f7. If rook e1, knight f3, rook e6, knight d2 check, that's just too much. And rook over here somewhere, knight c4. Tempo on the bishop. Bishop goes back. And then the rook comes over here to stop rook f3 to f7. And this looks very promising for black. This looks very, very good if Arjun goes for this one. Don't hang your bishop to rook a7. Oh, I just lost. The rook is hanging. Ah, it can't even be on a3. Here. But now we don't have to worry about rook f3. But we do have to worry about this. How do we handle this? It's not so simple. It's not so simple what we do about the a file. No simple answer to white's idea here of just a takes b6. Yeah, but okay, not so simple. Exactly. It's a but okay, not so simple moment. And yeah, he's thinking about it. He's thinking about it. Shanklin played the expected move over here of taking on a7, and I don't know how long ago he played it, but is there a move for black other than bishop c2? I guess there's rook a6. Sure. Yeah, there's rook a6 as an alternative. And that's what he chooses. Wow, okay. Looks like a draw. That looks like a draw. Looks like a draw. I think he's got it. Maybe, you know, maybe there's some symbolic advantage for white lingering, but I think I'm going to put equal here. Okay, they're not going to move. Let's see about Tabatabae. Goes queen b4. Yeah, process of elimination. Process of elimination, queen b4. All right, let's see what else was happening around the tournament today. So as noted, there was a draw immediately on the top board, which was lame. Exciting games on boards 2 and 3. Draw between Merjan and Sankal. Huh. I thought Merjan was up a pawn, but I guess he didn't really go for it. We've got an interesting game of Arjun's. We've got Theodoru against Yu Yang Yi with an extra pawn for Theodoru. Sarana beating Vakidov very ridiculously easily. Nesterov against Fedoseev looks complex. Some exciting Najdorfs getting played on many boards. And what's going on here? How's the black rook just on e2? Outrageous position there. And how's Daneshvar doing? Oof, looks like he's suffering. But who knows? Still in the game. Okay. Rook d4, the move for Sam. Yeah, everyone loves the knight. Or so good. Is this anything? The bishop could go to c2, right? It would be fine there. Well, rook takes a2, Patrick. He'll take the bishop. But I think, you know, something like bishop takes c2 looks good for eliminating his pawns, and that gets played. Arjun is deep in thought here, but I have to go pick up the kids now, I think. If the bishops get traded, would that game be a theoretical draw? Depends. Depends, Lazy Sat. There are some positions that are draws, some that are playable, depending on the number of pawns on the board and stuff. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna have to leave you all here at this point. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a pretty exciting and instructive game between Shanklin and Puranik. Honestly, Puranik's e3 move was vindicated when he was able to play actively with queen f5, queen e4, and eventually in an endgame even down 2 pawns, you know, just attack all white's pawns on light squares. But I still wonder if maybe Sam could have pressed a little bit more with this bishop h6 move here instead of the queen c4 move. That's kind of a remaining question for this game for sure. Where did Shank drop his advantage? I mean, I might be wrong about him having an advantage, but I don't think I am. So this would be my first thought, Patrick, would be that bishop h6 here would have been the superior move, I think. Yeah, it looks like a strong move to me. And we didn't find anything clear. Of course, there were... Of course, there were, you know, black could keep defending with queen f6 after bishop h6, right? It was nothing. There was nothing dead about black's position. It was just, you know, interesting in the game. Could keep going. Maybe same with queen f7. But yeah. All right, that's going to bring us to the end of our show today.